Yes, team, and welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today, we have one of my personal clients, Matt. Matt Cooney, he's the founder of MC Future Fitness, and he's built a phenomenal coaching business in what he does. And honestly, this guy has overcome some real existential challenges, and I'm really looking forward to diving into them today. Matt, brother, welcome to the TMP Podcast.
Kieran, thanks a million for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to come on the podcast and share a bit about my story with you and everyone.
What's also very cool, Matt, is you're one of the many people that go through the journey where they listen to the podcast and they come onto the program and they graduate and now they're a guest on the podcast. So it's a very, very,
Yeah.
very, very cool and exciting moment. But just tell our audience what it is that you do.
So obviously I'm Matt Cooney. I'm the owner of MC Future Fitness. We're an online fitness coaching company. So started in 2015. So a while ago. I'm getting old. I'm like in my mid 30s now. I'm 33. So I've been in the fitness industry, I suppose, since 18. But I worked in a gym, dipped in and out of the industry, moved to Australia with the intention of becoming a world famous personal trainer, and instead ended up on a building site for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And then something happened in my life, a tragic thing where I lost somebody, and that kind of sparked the change for me of starting to move into fitness. It was what I always wanted to do, but again, I got stuck in somewhere where I just didn't have I was just scared essentially to go for it. And it wasn't until that happened that kind of changed my whole life. From literally that day, I decided I was going into coaching. Moved within a year. I'd moved back from Australia to Ireland, traveled like 5 countries, full-time PT, full-time online coaching. And ever since then, that was 2015. It's been a journey, to say the least, to get to the point we are today. So I suppose our MC Future Fitness, the journey of the company, is a lot like myself. Started about physique and building the body. A lot of trainers can probably relate. Looking back now, it came from my own insecurities and trying to build this shell on the outside to kind of cover up all that was going on the inside. That developed over time then to looking into the lifestyle, the mindset, the health kind of holistic approach, and more so from my point of view of trying to get better results. I was like this puzzle, that how do we keep getting better results? That led me to like optimizing your health. And then over the last couple of years, since being a business owner, kind of gotten to that point where you're dealing with kind of bit of exhaustion, burnout, and then stress, high levels of stress. Then that has kind of made the evolution with the company into more looking after people's personal, physical, and professional health, and being able to excel in all areas. Because for me, the personal actually a lot got neglected on the way up here on this road, as probably with a lot of trainers. When you start to run your own business, I didn't plan any of this. So it starts to take off and your life kind of turns a bit upside down. And it wasn't until the last couple of years where I, decided that I needed to sort that out as well. So it became this balancing act. And that led me towards Kieran at the start of this year to continue that journey of personal, professional growth and development. And here we are today.
I love that. There's two things I want to pick up on. And we don't have to go into the details if you don't feel comfortable, but you had a tragic loss. And one of the biggest things around death is such a powerful change agent, because it often it holds up a mirror to everybody around that individual. And it's a subtle reminder that we're not here forever. And we often, particularly in the West, where we don't really, people live for a long time. People, we don't see a lot of death. Whereas if you look at a lot of other countries, you experience death so much more often. And as a result, we kind of create this fallacy that we're going to live forever. And sometimes it takes us to lose a loved one for us to realize what's truly important in life, and uh, why it's worth going after your dreams and pushing on. So that's a really fascinating thing. This is going to sound really morbid. I mean, I'm a guy that's got memento mori, remember you will die, tattooed on his forearm. Um, but I've had friends and family members, and I've thought, you know what? I think for you to snap out of this, it's going to take somebody to die for you to realize that you only get one shot, because you only really do get one shot at this. And I think when you recognize that, that can be such, in the short term, such a painful, destructive, grief-stricken event. In the medium to long term, if you play your cards right and you do the work and you work through the grief, then fucking hell, it can traject you onto a path, just like it has for you. If you're going to give our audience a company snapshot, how is that set up insofar as we know the coaching mechanism is all online, but I know that you've built a team over the last few months and years.
And how, I suppose, with just to go back first on the death, yeah, it only reflecting now, looking back, like I remember, so it was my cousin and he was only 23, and the day after he died, I woke up and I could hear a voice in my head, like basically like screaming, saying, "Life is too short, life is too short, life is too short." That was like the 29th of December. By the 5th of January, I had my flights booked to Thailand, Croatia, moving back, was leaving the job that I had been stuck in for 2.5 years. And that, it was like, also for him, he was completely the opposite of me. I was like very safe and wouldn't take chances. And he was like, went to Australia at 18 with no education, had worked in Saudi Arabia, had worked in Sweden, was the type of person that I lived with in Australia. So I would come home on a Friday and he'd be sitting there and I'm like, "What happened? What are you doing?" He's like, "I left my job." He's like, "What? Why?" He's like, "I didn't like it." It's like, "You can't do that." And then he walk out on Monday. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I got no job." And I would never do anything like that. So like, and I was like trying to give him life advice. And when he actually passed, I was like, this is as weird as it says. I'm like, although he was only 23, he had no regrets. And I was like, imagine, on the flip side, imagine that was me today. I would only be, all that would go through me was, I should have done this. I could have. So that's where that flip just literally was like, hey, life is too short. We need to take action right now. And that's essentially what I did. And like you said, that started that snowball effect.
Well, just on that, Matt, before we go into the structure of the company, Matt has realized the dream that many online coaches feel like they want. And what I mean by that is he is a coach that whenever I get on a call with him, I have to ask him where he is. In fact, I don't even know where you are today. Where are you today, Matt?
I'm actually in Ireland today, but that's why, yeah, if I sound weird, Ireland's getting its 2 weeks of summer and I've gotten hay fever, and that's why like my nose is here. But yeah, usually I think it's the 4th or 5th country I've been in on a call to over the last 5 months.
So Matt's realized that dream of coaching online and traveling. I mean, look, if you could reel off some of the countries you've been in the last 12 months, like where have you been?
So last September was in Spain, then went to Australia from October to January, went to Bali for a couple of months, went to Dubai, and I'm back in Ireland now, and I'm going to Thailand in 2 weeks, and then coming back, and then I'm going somewhere else. So yeah, I kind of have about 6 different countries around the world we kind of circle around for a couple of months at a time.
And to some coaches listening to this, that is the dream. That is the laptop lifestyle. But not everyone can handle the laptop lifestyle. And I say this to coaches that, are keen on doing the work and going out and living that life. But it's not easy. And even we've spoken about those various different things that you have to work on and figure out as you go and adjust that. So if you're going to give any tips to a young coach who's probably finally got on their business, or not even necessarily a young coach, a coach has finally got on their business online, they're finally in a place where they can go and do the traveling. One, they're a little bit scared, and two, any tips and advice for those individuals?
Yeah, I think it can be very much not what you think it is,
Mm.
because yeah, even the perception for me is like, oh, I live this life where I just chat around on planes and maybe do the odd bit of work, but it actually is. I've had to learn how to do it. Like I think I remember telling you, Kieran, when I first started, it caused me too much stress because I
Mm.
was trying to travel, trying to do the holiday things, then trying to work. And then I feel bad because I'm in a country and I can't do anything, only work. And then if I'm out doing things and I'm not covering the work part, it created so much stress. So for me personally, like a guideline, I don't go anywhere for less than a month.
Mm.
And I'll always, as my partner laughs at me, the first thing I look for is like a gym near me, a good apartment, so I can set up. Like as soon as I get to a place, my work environment is like I'm rearranging things, putting before I've done anything. It's like I need my work environment, and then I keep my routine 52 weeks a year. Like Monday to Sunday is I'm very. Even though you won't know what country I'm in, you know what I'm doing on each day at that time. And I think you need that because I think sometimes with coaches as well, when they start to do that, they can take their foot off the pedal when it comes to business, or they become too lax, and then they feel guilty for that. So you, I think you also need to. It does take a level of discipline, especially if you want to grow. And I think that's, as we talked about, like knowing what you want from your business is important because yes, I want freedom, but I also want growth, and you can't have 100% of both. Unfortunately, as you learn.
Mm.
So for example, we were in Dubai recently and Bali,
Mm.
and I was also dieting for a photo shoot. So again, there was a level, and we were pushing business. So I didn't do much, bar work, eat, sleep, train. But I was fine with that, and it's knowing that you will have these periods of times where again everything is a bit of a sacrifice and a trade-off, but I'm still grateful to be able to that for me, having that as a worry is I was on a building site 5 years ago, shoveling for 6 days a week. I'm okay with with that, having to work for a couple of hours in my Dubai apartment.
Well, here's the thing, mate. You don't. There's no such thing as total freedom. You know, freedom starts when you realize you're trapped. So every single decision that you make will lead to a level of trapped. So whilst you might have had stability on the building site, you're still on the building site. Whilst you might be able to travel around the world, and even when you came over here and you dropped in for a coffee, which was lovely, it's so cool to be able to just have that freedom to go and do that and meet people and network and chat and connect. At the same time, there's a level of tiredness, there's a level of time zone shift, there's a level of just disruption that you have to be really agile and be able to adjust. And yeah, if you're going to be working and doing that lifestyle, I always, similar to you, I always recommend a minimum of 1 to 3 months in one place. 2 months is often a sweet spot because it allows you to build routines. If you're chopping and changing everything every 1, 2, 3 weeks, it does create a lot of noise. I've experienced that personally, and then also with a lot of clients that are doing the digital nomad laptop lifestyle as well, because it's really hard for you to settle. And particularly if you're changing environments as drastically as you are, going from Australia to Dubai to Ireland to Bali to Thailand to these are very different environments. So take a little bit of time for your body to adjust from even just the water that you drink, the food that you eat, the timings, the time zones. So you have to be really, really agile. But there is always going to be a trade-off because look, for me, the last 2 years, so TMP's 2.5 years old, the 12 months before I was traveling around and just sort of coaching where I was, for me, I made a decision to optimize for growth. So as a result, unless I'm publicly speaking somewhere, I'm pretty much based in Dubai. I'm flying next week to London to speak, and then I'm flying to Marbella to speak, then I'm flying to Glasgow to speak, and then I'm coming back, and I'm like, right, back in the desert for a little bit of normality, and then a bit more speaking in September as well. But it is a case of you got to pick what your priorities are. And if your priorities is going out and exploring life and going out and seeing the world, there's nothing wrong with scaling back your ambition on your business. On the flip side, you don't have to just go, well, business isn't important. You are a living testament of somebody that's scaling an online fitness coaching company whilst traveling the world. And for anyone that's listening to this isn't just Matt on his own, but he's built a team around him as well to facilitate that.
Yeah. And that presents its own challenges in itself, and as you build a team, you become a leader and you are now responsible for more than, again, just yourself. So that is also added pressure that I found, an expectation on myself, who now, has these people to look after. And there's a whole new journey of lessons, successes, failures, a mixture of emotions that go into that process, and especially over the last three years for me, that has been challenging, and there's been lots of obstacles. But I think even from working with yourself the last few months, there's been a lot of growth in that. And now for me going forward, and that's, as you said, like when I joined you, there was a lot of feeling of being lost a bit and not really know where I was going with it all. Because like I said earlier, I didn't plan this. It wasn't like I sat down with a pen and paper, and like most trainers, you just, when you start, you're like, I can get paid to train people. I love training. That, I'm like, this is like crazy. Then you start making money doing that, but then it evolves into, again, the coaching and the online, and you end up essentially winging it in a way, because you don't know especially when I was starting out coaching, there was no blueprint for online coaching. It was like, my whole thing was demand. You start doing one-to-one sessions, you realize not enough time in the day, and then it goes to group. You're like, okay, let's take more people for the group. And that's what I created 6 8-week challenges. And again, that is a whole new system, a whole new service that you're then providing. And then that builds up, and yet it gets to a point where, you're now taking on staff, you're hiring, you have responsibilities. And even for the balance that I found was like, what you talk about a lot is between being in the business and on the business, or like coaching, being the coach versus being the owner. And I definitely had a big struggle with, when I first took on the team, I was so much in the coaching that I couldn't do the two at once. And I was nearly like, oh, it's near too much effort to have this team. I'm trying to do both, when I in hindsight now realized I needed to take that time to train the team, and maybe take 2 steps back to go 3 forward,
Yeah. And, there's two halves. If you're going to be a coaching entrepreneur, you do have to love both the coaching delivery and the coaching entrepreneurship and leadership side. And often, of course, there's skills, communication skills, structure skills, hiring, all of those things. But often it comes down to belief that I do deserve to be where I am. I am worthy of the success that I've built. I am worthy of leading the team. I am worthy of taking my mission to the world. And sometimes what can happen is, as you evolve, your identity will kind of get stuck between identities. And I think at the beginning of the TMP process, you was at that point where you'd grown out of the things that you valued beforehand, perhaps more on the aesthetic side, and you're starting to look at, okay, well, what's more interesting? And a pattern that can happen with coaching entrepreneurs in particular is, if they're not being authentic to who they are, they kind of lose the drive and ambition, and they kind of slowly start to bleed out in their businesses. They slowly start to self-sabotage, and that fire just doesn't happen overnight. It just slowly starts to get a little bit smaller. And what happens is the clients that you start to coach no longer interest you, or the problems that you're solving just aren't quite the same. And then you can kind of get stuck in this existential pattern of, well, this is where I've made all my money, and this is where I've built a successful business. Can I possibly go on to another thing? Or when you start hiring team members for the first time, it's like, God, who am I to be leading this team? Who am I to do this and do that? So sometimes it's not necessarily the knowledge, it's just the backing and the belief and the worthiness to know that, yeah, I fucking deserve to be in this room because I worked fucking hard to get here.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that. Like the first time we spoke, that was, and leading up to that, it's like a weird thing that both of us kind of said there was nothing inherently wrong with it. Wasn't like, oh my God, I'm in a this like dark place, but there was something missing, and there was this feeling of unfulfillment, and over time, it created a fear of change and a fear of making the wrong decisions. And I started looking back at the past going, oh, should I have done that? Or why haven't I done this? And then you can get caught looking at other coaches who are exploding and going, I would have been there if I done this. And you get essentially caught in your own head. And that's a big thing for me. And when I look back, again, the most successful I ever was when I was just taking action. And again, I was fearless. And because I didn't try and build this, it just happened naturally. And it was all done through passion. You know, it was even remember just the work, like looking back now at like the amount of like actual manual labor was in it compared to systems and stuff now. But I loved every minute of it, you know. But and it's like looking back, I'm like, geez, I was crazy back then to do, you know, manually doing absolutely everything. But it was all driven through passion. And I think for me, that was where I got to that stage before I joined, was like feeling lost, kind of in maybe land as well. That's where even before, that's why reaching out to you. Obviously, I remember I telling you I was thinking about it for a long time. And looking back, I kind of related for coaches. I was the equivalent, like with mindset, of your normal gym goer who is like the average bro. It knows about protein, knows to track his macros, progressively overload, maybe watches some YouTubers on YouTube like Christian Guzman or that, but doesn't think they need coaching. You know, 'cause they're like, why would I need it? I know my macros, I know to progressively overload. And as we know with the coaching process, at every single level, to get to another level, you need coaches, you need coaching. So I was the mindset version of that. Like even when we spoke, I was like, yeah, I've read those books, I've done this, I've done a lot of mindset, but realistically, I'd never actually delved deeper into the process. And probably took me so long because I was afraid as well of, okay, that going that bit deeper and investing in myself in it, you know, because again, it's very uncertain and a lot of maybes, maybe land, which is
Yeah,
not a good place.
it's not a good place. Yeses are great. No's are actually really good, but it's the maybes that will kill you. And you were stuck in a place of paralysis by analysis. Oh, but should I do this or should I do that? Or is it this or is it that? Or have I made a mistake here? Or what if, what if, what if? And then you got the infinite what if spiral, and you can really get stuck. Um, Often what's driving a lot of that is, again, it's identity change. You're not the same person that you were. Thus the old tasks of what used to fascinate you don't fascinate you anymore. And you've got to start finding new problems. But if we have belief issues, we have fear, uncertainty, maybe land, that stops us from taking action, and then it compounds the problem. And I could sense that was what was happening with you. Run through some of the emotions that were coming up at that time that were stopping you from executing.
There was a lot of fear. I'd say that was the main one. Fear of loss,
Hmm.
kind of like I had built this thing, and that had made me, it affects your decision making then, or your inability to make decisions. And Joe Parrish kind of always says this, but I think I was playing to lose. Oh, playing to not lose instead of
Hmm.
playing to win. So you're playing offense all the time instead of playing defense. And you know, if you're ever watching a football game, you know what, like when a team's like 2-1 up and they start defending, and you're like, oh my God, just waiting for it to happen. That was me.
Right.
You know,
Pressure. Yeah.
yeah. And that then comes a lot of, I think, internal pressure, and you become resistant to change. Again, the longer it builds up, the worse it kind of gets, you know. And I think for me, it was that inability then to be fully authentic with myself and with others. Because like that, when you change, essentially you change who you are as you grow. I I was a bit afraid to step into that new identity, to leave behind a lot of the old me essentially. And even like you said, to even make those changes with the type of client I work with, the programs that we had run. And it's like, this is what had always worked. What if this doesn't work? Or am I being a fraud here? Can I really do this? Am I that, like, high performance coach? And it's like, on Monday you are, on Tuesday you're not. And so it's like, it becomes this very in your head type of game, and that's where you have that uncertainty, and it usually leads to sometimes, again, the feelings of not being good enough, I think, was a big one when you stripped the layers back.
And where did those feelings come from?
Childhood, and a lot of growing up and feeling a bit inferior. And what I found out as well, which was interesting, like as we went through the process, there was things holding me back that I didn't know was ever holding me back. So as we again peel back layers of the onion, I realized, when I was a teenager, I moved from Australia to Ireland, so my whole life got kind of turned upside down at 13. And then at 15, my parents split up. So that was another thing that had happened. And then, obviously my father wasn't there anymore. Mother wasn't technically there, as she just, turned to her own coping mechanisms with alcohol. So I was left kind of feeling abandoned. And not to play the pity party, I didn't actually take it that way at all. What I did was put a chip on my shoulder and said, I don't need anybody. It doesn't matter what. I was like, I'll do what I'll do anyway. And I carried this little thing on my shoulder, and it actually served me really good because it drove me to do things. And I was like, I'm going to show you anyway. I didn't know this is basically like what I discovered. I was unconsciously telling myself that. And then all the successes I had with business, with growing, they were all essentially through a bit of resentment, that kind of like, I show you. But that also, it's served me well to a point and then stopped serving me, because you can only do that for a certain amount of time before it will take you to a certain point, and then it will actually keep you there or send you backwards unless you get pulled forward through an actual vision of what you want, instead of just proving someone else wrong.
100%, and that's a great share. And look, the common human neurosis is we're all afraid of not being good enough, and we're all afraid of not being lovable. The difference is kids make a decision, and they either get that message and they go, yeah, you're right, and they don't try. But TMPers go the opposite way, and they say, fuck you, I'm going to prove you wrong. And they go and they push and they push and they push and they push. And that's why I'm fascinated by the ambitious mind. That's exactly what I did as a kid. Didn't feel enough, living in a council house in a really nice area, feeling judged by the other kids, being an ADHD kid at school, my dad not playing me, yet our team was bottom of the bottom league. And he still benched me every game. All of that inferiority was like, oh, fuck you, I'm going to prove you all wrong. And that does take you to a certain level, but you always hit plateaus and you get stuck and you get frustrated, and then you start to self-sabotage, and then you start questioning, because if you have a deep-rooted belief of I'm not enough, and then you've got the evidence or the perceived evidence that that's not enough because you're not growing at the speed at which you were growing, well, that's where things get really tricky. And it's the same level of the thinking that got you to this level isn't the thinking that's going to get you to the next level. So for me, I've always got one-to-one coaches in my corner. Even now, I've got 3 mentors that I meet as a minimum once a month or twice a month for a minimum of 2 hours each, because I'm always learning, I'm always growing. Sometimes we'll get there and there's nothing to talk about. Other times there's stuff going on, but you kind of need that new level of thinking to elevate that. And you can only take a client as deep as you've gone yourself in any given area. So for you, you recognize, okay, that served me, but it's not going to serve me anymore. And sometimes there's 2 parts of that. One part is being insecure and having to prove yourself as you get a little bit older and you have the evidence. It's like, don't really need that. And then the other part's being skint. And if you're skint and you got to rebuild things, and then trust me, that will work. But when you're no longer skint and no longer insecure, it's kind of like doesn't really do anything for me anymore. And then that's where you get stuck, and that's where you get existential. But really, for us, Matt, it was about helping you grow out of that and evolve in towards abundance and growth and vision and purpose. If you was going to describe who you were at the beginning of the process versus who you are today, how would you describe those two people?
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about, and I was just reflecting on yesterday on a task we did with the identity worksheet, and I was looking at it, and I was like, "Oh, it just described the words and the things that I was scared of." So that person that started again was lost, unsure, uncertain. Everything you had mentioned there, that was me, and to look at now where I am is the clarity of who I am, what I'm doing, why I do it, and where I want to go is completely different. And it's kind of like looking at from where I was the future, it was foggy. It looked like I couldn't really make out the road. I was trying, but if you ever walk around with your hands out in front, your eyes closed,
Yeah,
that was kind of me. Versus now, I look forward and I can see the clear path. And it's also not going to be easy. And it's not like, oh, I have this magic road now that I just walk down. But I know that it's going to be worth doing that. And it's reignited my passion for it because I've looked at the things that weren't serving me and looked at, okay, like why are they still here? And I've gotten rid of them. And now, like tomorrow, for example, we're running our first client event. So I'm going to be standing up speaking in front of all our clients. And again, that is passion for me. I I've run 3 events in the last 4 weeks. That's why I came back to Ireland. That have again just ignited my passion for what I'm doing and the impact that we're having. And also from being around you and something I realized, and you said it, having those mentors and people is I need to have these conversations with people regularly. And the only way that can happen is if I do it. If I make myself like this week, I'm going to speak to this person, and I go out of my way to make sure it's part of my routine. Because again, this type of conversation gives me energy,
yeah,
and I think that's where you need to know what it is that you need at any given point. And I've still had bad days, bad weeks, stressful, as from coming on the call. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, there's a lot going on, but it's a different perception of it and a different reaction and an ability to take a step back and go, okay, even now, like even this week, I've been a bit stressed and I've been able to step back and go, like, I can understand my mind and why it's veering towards these thoughts and patterns of thinking. And I'm like, okay, that's that fear coming back in. I know it's over here, but where the abundance? What's the
mm,
other way of thinking? And that for me is key because again, we're all emotional creatures. When stress gets
mm,
high, intelligence gets low. So if you don't actually create the space as well to give yourself space to think, because obviously you're a big proponent of that with your king days, downtime, and it's something I would have not been good at, is giving myself space to think. And it's not only it's now that I understand it and like see the benefits of like the way I think when I give myself that space, I'm like, yes, it's just a different ball game. It's like we're playing a completely different game now, and the way I respond to everything is just on a new level. Yeah, it's way above. I thought I had a good level, but again, it's now a different level of thinking.
absolutely. And I can see it and I can feel it. Even when you came over for coffee, the energy that you came over for that coffee versus the one at the beginning at the process, you went from sort of lost, a little bit afraid to take risk and go into new territory to just complete control. And you were like, okay, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing. And some of the things that Matt did was clearing out the old limiting beliefs and the belief system and structure he had about himself and the world. And we did a lot of emotional work to get through that. And then once you've put in, and that happens in our foundation phase, the first 6 to 8 weeks of our program. Once you've got that and you're a bit more in control, we then started to build a future for Matt. And it was understanding, okay, well, what do you actually want? And what are the steps to get there? And when you break them down, actually, you're not far away as you want. But often people don't set goals or they don't set visions because there's an unconscious belief of, am I worthy of that? And also an unconscious belief of failure. What if I set that and I don't achieve it? So it's easy for us to, if we're in a fear bubble or in a paralysis by analysis bubble, to not set goals because I can't fail at something I haven't set. And once you had that belief and that backing, that confidence, and we built you a plan and we started to understand, well, where is it you're going? And psychologically, why do you want to get there? And this wasn't, this was a lot of graft. Every single piece of homework I set Matt to do, he went and got it done. He come back and went, here you go. He was getting on calls at 11 p.m. at night, sometimes at 6 a.m. because of his time zone difference. And he didn't complain once. Not once did he complain, He turned up and he did the work. And it's a testament to who you are as a man, as a leader, as a coach. And you should be really, really proud because I certainly am. I've got one question I always ask and you probably know the question, but forget us as an organization, forget me, forget TMP, but what does the phrase total mental performance mean to you? If you had it, how would you know?
It's funny, Kieran. Obviously, I knew you were going to ask this question because I've listened to the podcast, and it's probably a question. There's two sides to me. One of me was like, will I try to think of this really good answer now to blow this out of the park?
Yeah.
And then that was probably the old me, and the new one is like the authentic. That was just, I'm just going to go whatever I think, because I'm always like, it's every person that you ask, I'm very interested to see what they say, and I'll be honest, my answer would have been, I don't know right now, but what I can do is give you my best guess of what I think it is now. And the thing with it is, I don't think you can give a definitive answer to an infinite game. So what I mean is that the answer I give you right now, I hope that last year I wouldn't have given you that answer, and I hope that next year, if you asked me, I'd give you a different answer again, or an iterated version. So my version of total mental performance is knowing exactly who you are, knowing what you stand for, so your values, purpose, and mission, and living a life that's in line with that. And I think you need to break down each one of them, because you may have certain values and be living in line with them, but if you don't know really who you are, that mightn't be Matt's values, that mightn't be Kieran's, that could be somebody else's that you portrayed or believe that you should value that. And with it being an infinite game, you need to keep assessing who you are, what you stand for, because again, your values may change over the course of your life, and are you living in line with that? So as your values change, the way you live your life may have to change. And I think having the awareness to work on yourself on a deeper level, to know who you are, know what you stand for, and live in line with that is total mental performance.
I love that, mate. I absolutely love that. And if you look at that definition, you are living that definition. So a huge well done. I believe you've been TMP capped. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been to, I think so. I don't have the cap, but.
So you've been capped, and what that means is Matt has earned. You see the TMP cap in my profile picture. People always ask if they can buy them. They can't. You've earned them. So Matt has been capped. So next time I see Matt, he's going to be picking up his TMP cap and showing it off proudly. You cannot buy these things. You've only earned them by making a huge breakthrough in the evolution program and getting to where Matt is. If you look at Matt's definition of total mental performance, he's there. And that's it. But Matt, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor working with you and just seeing your growth and trajectory. It's like two different men entirely. So I'm looking forward to when we next catch up. I'll next see you, my friend. Where can everybody on the podcast find you?
Yeah, so at MC Future Fitness is my Instagram. The website is mcfuturefitness.com. And Instagram is probably the best place. And yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you for having me on today, having me share a bit about my story, and just for all you do with TMP and the whole process. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and couldn't recommend it enough.
Thank you, Matt. Much appreciated, mate. Well, guys, if you found today's podcast interesting, please share it to your story. Please do tag me. Please do tag Matt. We're trying to get this messaging out to the world. And if you look into the show notes, you should see Matt's contact details to get in touch with him. Big love, and we'll see you all into the next podcast.